What up, boys and girls? We are finished with the Rocky trilogy. Moving on now, I want to cover something a little more recent. The Cleopatra Netflix series. Now, I know it's controversial, but honestly, I watched it and I couldn't see any bias at all. I learned a lot, okay? Instead, they did something very radical with this documentary. They didn't get a historian, no, they got a gender studies feminist specialist, Miss Shelley Haley, to cover it. You may know her from the commercial when she said, "My grandmother told me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black." Yes, that's the person, not the historians. Who cares about what they have to say? Shelley Haley. She is the, or maybe Haley, well, whatever. She is the person they go to break up and explain to you. Because if you look her up, only she can apply the very specific, not just a feminist, not a historical reference. No, who needs that in a documentary? She provides you with a black American feminist view to what is happening. And it's quite interesting. You know, the scene, Cleopatra marries her brother, because my grandmother said so. Marrying your siblings is what gods do. Women of color are gods. Okay. Next scene, you know, we have Caesar, the first Roman general to conquer both lands, east and west of the Rhine River, aka the Germans and the Gauls, otherwise known as French today. Throwing a fit, just a temper tantrum, being a baby, and then we can assume this is probably true. Any successful Roman military leader was probably a crybaby because he's a white man, and that's what white men are. Okay, Caesar dies, et tu, Brute, and so now he's of no use. So she gets him. So now she needs to remarry. Cleopatra is a very self-reliant, determined woman. She don't need no man. And she never gets on her knees for no man. She only needs herself. Next scene, she gets on her knees in front of Mark Antony because without Caesar's protection, she now needs another man's protection. Anyway, so not ironically. So now, next scene, we've got Octavia, General Octavia. He didn't like Mark Antony. There was a civil war between him and Antony over who's going to rule Rome next after Caesar's death. And he's coming. He's got him outnumbered. And Mark Antony explains to Cleopatra, like, look, my Romans are not enough to defeat him on our own. Your Egyptian soldiers are not enough to defeat them on their own. But if we work together under my experienced, battle-hardened experience, we can defeat them. And she says, well, I'm coming. I don't have any experience in battle, but I am a strong woman. You heard it from Shelley Harry, because my grandmother said so. I am coming. So fine, all right. So they meet in the Mediterranean. Octavia's men coming south. The combined soldiers of Antony and Cleopatra. One ship goes down and Cleopatra says, oh, hell with this, and turns her men around. Let's go back to Egypt, leaving Mark Antony to die with his men, completely outnumbered. So back to Shelley Haley's input. Now, military commanders might tell you this was very cowardly. Some would say it's very stupid, because Antony by himself doesn't have enough men to beat them at sea. Cleopatra doesn't have enough men on her own to beat them at land in the city. But this is actually a very, very clever plan, you see, because Cleopatra knew with only her knowledge that her soldiers won't die if they're not on the battlefield, at least not that day. Well, Octavian kills all of Antony's men because they're divided. Then he quickly goes to land, kills all of Cleopatra's men the next day, takes her 3 children from her 3 baby daddies, 2 from her blood brothers, 1 from Caesar, I'm guessing, and says, look, I'll spare your children, Queen Cleopatra, if you just admit defeat. And Cleopatra says, hell with that, poisons herself, subjecting her children to a lifetime of Roman slavery. This is a strong woman living her own truth. There you have it, folks. That is the unbiased, completely historically accurate, unbelievable, great interpretation from Jada Pinkett Smith and Miss Because My Grandmother Said So.